The prophet Isaiah, on the first reading, made this beautiful plea to God to come, to send the Messiah, to restore everything again, because the people kept falling into sin, away from God. But the chosen people of God, they were in serious trouble. Under the Roman occupation, they had no political freedom or civil freedom. Before that, they had 200 years of rule by the Greeks, all the successors of Alexander the Great. Again, no political freedom, and what is worse, they had no religious freedom. They were grossly persecuted for following their faith. Before that, they were exiled to Babylon, forced out of their own land to live a life of servitude. And if it wasn't enough, they went 300 years without a prophet. So you will think that after all this, the chosen people of God will have lost all their hope. But that was not the case. It was around the time that Jesus came that the Jews were in full expectation of the coming of the Messiah. They were eager for the Messiah to come during this time, after all these troubling situations. And this is a paradox that we Christians have to learn. When the Jews had no human solution to all their problems, when the only thing that was left for them to do was to turn to God, that's when the Messiah came. It is when we learn to draw our hope from humility. And as time passes, and our Lord takes longer to come, we need to get a check on ourselves, because we are falling asleep. We are becoming drowsy. More and more, there are people who do not believe. Christians who have no expectation of going to heaven, no even desire to go there. If we forget about God, we will make our own happiness without God. We will be like the servant that fell asleep. We will be cut off from God's grace. Think about it. If we do anything without God, we're going to be glorifying ourselves. We're going to be thinking that we are the ones in full control. We are going to be the ones fooling ourselves, thinking that we are in control, blocking ourselves from receiving all the graces that God wishes to bestow upon us. The gospel gives us two examples to stay in expectation, to wait for Him. One is to stay alert, to not get drowsy. If you know a recovering addict, they will tell you how their former life was a daze, was just foggy. They were cut off from everything: reality, friends, healing, God. If you talk to a Christian that went through a conversion, They will also tell you how drowsy and dark their lives were without God. Now we look at our lives. Are we aware of the drowsiness or the sleepiness in our life? Do we have a desire for heaven and for God? If we don't, it's time to wake up. It's time to pay attention. It's time to turn to God. The second thing on the gospel is that Jesus assigned us a job. And we're responsible for that job. That job is our vocations. Whether priest, religious, married life, your responsibilities at work, social responsibilities. The reason why we fail at them is because we're too busy being in somebody else's business and not caring of our own. That will cause us to be drowsy. That will cause us to fall asleep on what we need to do, our responsibilities. We need to be awake. Awake to what we are called to do in life. Awake to our responsibilities in our jobs. Awake to our responsibilities with the country, with society, with the church. Because we're going to keep falling more and more and more away from reality if we don't do that. We're going to keep falling asleep. We're going to forget about God, and then we're going to fall into the sin of thinking we can do it without God. That's the danger. That is the danger of original sin. This Advent, we need to begin this expectation of God, this desire for God, for heaven. We need to teach our children how to expect, how to hope, so that when they grow up and life becomes difficult and hard, they can turn to God. We expect the Messiah to come again. But look what a beautiful God we have. What an amazing God we have. That even though we're called to be in expectation for his second coming, he makes himself present in the Eucharist every day. His full self to be with us, to encourage us along the way, to give us the strength and courage to continue, so that we don't forget about him, so that we don't forget that we need God. That is the work of a loving God. A God that desires us so much. He desires so deeply to be in that relationship with us. But we need to be awake to receive all his graces. The time to wake up is now. The time to desire God in heaven is now.